Welcome to India and the World, a research based podcast covering India and its interactions with the rest of the world. As we go along, we will start with India's immediate neighborhood and subsequently expand outwards on the map. We will also explore various facets of India's glorious and sometimes tumultuous past. The first season of India and the World is Sibling Rivalry, in which we will focus on the long standing acrimony in the relations between India and Pakistan. In the very first episode today, we will be looking at the origin of this animosity. How did the mutual distrust begin? Where do the roots lie? When we look at a world map, the borders between countries appear clean and final, solid black lines that look as if they have always been part of the natural landscape, like a mountain range or a river. However, if you zoom in on the line separating India and Pakistan, you find it isn't clean at all. It doesn't follow any natural geographical features. In fact, it's a scar that was not formed over centuries by geology or time. Instead, it was drawn in just 5 weeks by Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a man who had never even set foot on the subcontinent before. He was reportedly very ill and was desperate to return home. Today, we are stripping away the headlines of border skirmishes and cricket rivalries to look at the anatomy of this scar. We are looking at the deep, calcified distrust between India and Pakistan. As Sahibzada Yaqub Khan, a former foreign minister of Pakistan, once said in 1997, there is a fundamental line of hatred between India and Pakistan which generates suspicion, mistrust, and antagonism. Today, we are going to trace that line of hatred back to its origin. We're going to take a look at the fault lines drawn in 1947, not just on the map, but in the hearts and minds of the people and the machinery of the state. We'll examine why, as one observer noted, these two nations have become distant neighbors, divided by common languages and a shared history that they read very different. To understand the distrust, you have to understand that India and Pakistan were not just born out of a political separation. They were born out of a collision of two fundamentally different ideas of what states should or could be. For the Indian National Congress and leaders like Nehru, the partition was a tragedy, a vivisection of a historically united entity that was India. They accepted it reluctantly to speed up the independence, but they never accepted the two nation theory. The idea that Hindus and Muslims were distinct nations who could not live together. For India, secularism was the glue. If India accepted that Muslims needed a separate home, it would negate the very basis of India's own secular existence. On the other side, for the Muslim League and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, India was a very British artificial creation. The creation of Pakistan was seen as an escape from the inevitable tyranny of a Hindu majority. So, right at the starting line, you have a structural problem. Pakistan's existence is based on being not India. As Stephen Cohen notes, Pakistan defined itself as a homeland for a threatened minority, and this identity required a narrative that India was a constant existential threat. Conversely, for India, Pakistan's very existence as a theocratic state was a challenge to its secular identity. But ideas alone didn't create this level of visceral hatred. It was also the deep trauma suffered during the partition of 1947. The unceremonial haste with which the British departed India was primarily the reason behind the causes of this trauma. The British Empire was exhausted from World War II, it was broke, and decided it could no longer afford the upkeep of its crown jewel, India. The naval mutiny of 1946 and the widespread support towards the under trial INA soldiers were also ominous warnings which indicated how precarious their hold on India had become. The decision to partition the subcontinent, carving out Pakistan as a new state for Muslims, had already been taken. Therefore, there was a need to define the boundary between the two before their departure. To do this, they brought Sir Cyril Radcliffe, who was a brilliant London lawyer who was at the top of his field. But there was one catch. He knew almost nothing about the culture, languages, or geography of India. The British logic was that this ignorance was an advantage. They assumed his ignorance implied he could have no basis to be biased towards any of the parties. He was intended to be an impartial surgeon. Arriving in Delhi on 8th of July 1947, with independence set for August 15th, Radcliffe had just 36 days, that is 5 weeks, to divide a territory of 400 million people. Working from out of date maps and fiercely disputed census data, Radcliffe sat in a hot Delhi bungalow, suffering from Delhi belly, while drawing a line that would decide the fate of millions. This haste led to numerous heartaches when the final boundary was revealed on 17th August, 2 days after the independent nations had been in existence. Pakistan, in particular, was unhappy about the award of several districts in Punjab to India, despite the slim Muslim majority in them. The most critical among these were some subdivisions of Gurdaspur district, through which the only viable all-weather road from India to Jammu and Kashmir passed. Pakistani sources allege that the last viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, secretly influenced Radcliffe to give Gurdaspur to India to provide a backdoor into Kashmir. Consequently, from this day, Pakistan believed that the entire process was rigged by an umpire in the pocket of the other team. But the partition wasn't just a bureaucratic handover, it was a man made disaster with millions of casualties. When the British administration rushed for the exits, they left a vacuum that was filled by violence. It is estimated that 1 million people died and over 13 million were displaced. The violence wasn't just a tragedy, it became a founding memory of the relationship. In Pakistan, the narrative took hold that India wanted to strangle the new state at its birth. There was a genuine belief among the Pakistani leadership that Indian leaders like Sardar Patel had accepted partition only with the conviction that Pakistan would collapse and come crawling back. This fear was further fueled by the reality of the division of assets. This is a crucial, often overlooked fault line. When the British left, the assets of British India, money, military, equipment, water, had to be divided. Pakistan had the unfair expectation that the assets should be divided 50-50. But rationally, the decision was to divide them pro rata based on the population, which worked out with them being eligible only for 20%. Pakistan felt cheated. Their share included 75 crore rupees of cash and 1,70,000 tons of military hardware. But while this transfer was in progress, clashes in Kashmir started. We will discuss these clashes and Kashmir in detail later. But because of these clashes, India was reluctant to transfer the remaining 55 crore of the cash and the rest of the military equipment. Logically, it made no sense to arm and fund a country you were literally at war with. But according to Pakistani accounts, even the equipment that was delivered was often sabotaged. We have accounts of crates arriving full of rocks and scrap metal or vehicles with sugars in their petrol tanks. Whether this was deliberate sabotage by the Indian government or the chaos of time, it was yet another reason for Pakistan to distrust India. This brings me to the so called jugular vein. A very apt analogy given by a Pakistani official was a dead dog in the well. He was referring to Kashmir. He said, "You can draw as much dirty water from the well as you can, but if the dead dog is still in the well, the water will continue to be poisoned." So there can be no clean water, that is trust between India and Pakistan, till the dead dog is removed from the well or the Kashmir issue is solved. But why did Kashmir become the unhealed wound? Because it struck at the heart of both national identities. And we will be covering Kashmir in a great amount of detail in subsequent episodes. But for the time being, for Pakistan, Kashmir was the unfinished business of partition. It was a Muslim majority state, and by logic of partition, it belonged to Pakistan. Jinnah also famously called it the jugular vein of Pakistan. Strategically, the rivers that water Pakistan's agriculture flow through Kashmir. If India held Kashmir, Pakistan felt India had a stranglehold on its economic survival. For India, holding Kashmir became a test of its secularism. If a Muslim majority state could be happy, integral part of India, it proved the two nation theory wrong. Nehru and later Indira Gandhi feared that if Kashmir seceded on religious grounds, it would trigger the unraveling of India's mosaic of minorities and lead to more partitions. So you have a situation where neither side could compromise without destroying their own national self image. Thus, it became a zero sum game. As one Indian diplomat noted, the rivalry is so deep rooted it defies rational solution. 79 years after independence, Kashmir remains a disputed flashpoint between the two countries. And in these 79 years, and Pakistan have had three full blown wars and a couple of skirmishes, including Kargil in 1999 and recently Op Sindoor in 2025. The 1965 war ended technically in a stalemate, giving Pakistan a face saving, though false, narrative of having won. But their decisive defeat and surrender in 1971, followed by the creation of Bangladesh out of erstwhile East Pakistan, served as a ton of salt in the unhealed sores of already existing distrust. For the Pakistani establishment, India's military intervention in 1971 was the ultimate proof of India's long term goal, the dismemberment of Pakistan. When Indira Gandhi reportedly said after the victory that India had avenged the defeat of 1,000 years, it cut deep into Pakistan's psyche. It humiliated the Pakistan military and fundamentally altered their strategic thinking. It reinforced the belief that Pakistan could not rely on international alliances or the United Nations. It needed to be militarily self sufficient, eventually leading to the pursuit of nuclear weapons to balance the scales. For India, 1971 was a moment of clarity but not of resolution. It proved that the two nation theory couldn't hold a country together. Muslim Bengal broke away from Muslim West Pakistan. But instead of settling the issue, it left a truncated, insecure Pakistan that felt it had nothing left to lose, turning to offensive defense and proxy warfare to keep India off balance. And so it continues to date. So, why does this persist? Why, decades later, are we still here? Sources suggest that the hostility has become structural. It is built into the domestic politics of both countries. In Pakistan, the threat from India becomes a necessity for the survival of the state and the dominance of the military. If the threat disappears, the glue holding the disparate provinces of Pakistan together weakens. We see evidence that anti India hysteria is often manufactured to divert attention from internal failures. In India, the trauma of partition created a permanent suspicion of Pakistan's intent. There is a deep seated belief that Pakistan's DNA is inherently anti India and that it seeks to fragment India through proxy wars and supporting insurgencies. We have created what scholars call a paired minority conflict. Both sides view themselves as victims. Both sides feel threatened by the other. And both sides have raised generations on textbooks that portray the other as the treacherous enemy. As we wrap up, we must recognize that this just isn't about borders. It's about the scars of 1947 that were never allowed to heal. It's about a divorce where the dispute over assets was never settled and the custody battle over Kashmir turned into a blood feud. Until these two nations can look past the fundamental line of hatred and address the anxieties of their own identities, the distrust will remain the only thing they truly share. Thank you for listening to today's podcast and look forward to seeing you again next time.